What do you think are sort of some of the challenges that we're facing in maternal healthcare for Black women, for Brown women, women of color? From your perspective, what do you think those challenges are?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, there's a couple things to look at. Uh, in the United States, this is the most dangerous place in the developed world to give birth.
Yes.
Um, we have a higher obstetrician ratio to midwifery ratio compared to other industrialized nations that have a higher midwifery to obstetrician ratio, which means that birth is perceived globally as non-threatening, as a non emergent event, unless it is an emergency. And here we see it the opposite. We really do pathologize the process and see it as we need to rescue the baby from the body, right? And we see it
Mhm.
as the birthing person and this experience of birth being precarious and needing to be surveilled and needing to be monitored, and something could go wrong at any time is really the lens, right? And there's many
Mhm.
reasons for that. Obviously, clinically speaking, if you're inside of an institutional setting, there are protections in place for those institutions, right? And so through insurance,
Yeah.
legally, people want to also protect themselves from liability. So the type of care you get is compromised by this false sense of safety that is designed to protect the institution. So the institutional goals and the goals of people who go to get care are not aligned, right? So
Mhm.
my experience of wanting to have, wanting to maybe be birthing upright, or, my experience of wanting to be moving around the room, or to be untethered or not monitored the
Mhm.
whole time, those are things that are going to come into question, because monitoring and surveillance is hallmark for all of our institutions, because when we look at medicine writ large, but really all institutionalized spaces that we occupy, all of them are carceral in nature. So there is already a thread and a through line of confinement, of surveillance, of mistrust, of power over,
Mhm.
dominance, um, hazing. All of these elements like show up in these experiences that people talk about all the time and talk about experiencing directly through their care, whether it's through nurse practitioners, doctors, it could be staff members, but people experience harm that's associated with dismissiveness, not feeling listened to or heard, having rushed care. All these things like contribute to an experience where you don't feel safe, right? But
Mhm.
then on top of that, you have people who are underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. You have people who are um, seen as being, oh, you're complaining or nothing's wrong. So
Mhm.
hypochondriac, right? Like seen as not being serious about their care, or seen as, oh, you just want drugs, right? So that's why you're here. Not really
Right.
that because you're in pain. Um, Black women are often seen as being impervious to pain. And so the
Mhm.
idea that they could be experiencing pain or have a higher pain tolerance than white women is a pervasive thought. And so you've all these things that you're like dealing with that are really hallmarks of medical racism and institutional bias that shows up for individuals along different intersections in life, and how they show up embodied in spaces if they're racialized, right? Also, there's the real experience of medical neglect
Mhm.
that occurs,
Yeah.
where a decision is made that is life threatening or lethal. And this happens frequently. It happens frequently, and people do not have recourse to
Mhm.
uh, take action because, like policing, you know, medicine and hospitals like also protect. Like they
Mhm.
double down and protect their own, right? So nobody's gonna
Right.
like push a doctor out there and say,
Right.
but they stay in line. And so, if you want to really see how people, what it looks like to pursue justice, um, and if you really want to see what it looks like to be harmed by someone who operates within one of these institutionalized spaces, you can compare whether it's a school, because there's unions, you can't fire teachers, whether it's policing, they get like maybe sent to a different county or something, they still can police. If you're a doctor, you can switch hospitals, you still can practice. There is no actual accountability. And we can see that, right? So for Black people who experience this harm as debilitating, as incapacitating, like it impacts what we perceive as our capacity to birth, right? To see that other people
Mhm.
are dying or having near death experiences. That impacts our capacity building as birthing people. It also causes a lot of stress and distress and anxiety to think about that as you're navigating a pregnancy. And it also, as a real experience, does impact our communities because they are matrilineal in nature. And
Mhm.
so our communities are designed with women at the crux. So when a mother dies, it does distort the community. It does distort the community. So we have a lot of lost potential in our communities from mothers who are gone too soon, who cannot live to raise their
Mhm.
children into adulthood.
Right.
And so while it's a human rights issue, it's also a reproductive justice issue. It is a feminist issue.
Mhm.
It's not the feminist agenda, right? But these are things that are really concerning. I think that understanding, though, the rudiments of our current medical model, how it operates, how we get here, I think is really critical to understand so that people can actually uncover and think about what it does look like to design solutions. Because most of what we're experiencing or sort of trying to understand is through this lens of like a singular event. Like, how did this thing happen?
Right.
Not actually, how do we design a system that
Mhm.
allows something like this to happen again, right?
Right.
So, what does it look like to redesign that actually centers the most marginalized? Because that's what's really important.
Mhm.
I like to think to like the disability justice work that is happening all the time because marginalized people always have the best solutions, because nothing is being designed with them in mind. And so when they were working on the Disability Act, one of the pieces was to figure out curb cutting and sidewalks, right? And nobody could understand how we would do that. Oh my God, infrastructurally, how would we do that? What a nightmare. Like how are we going to do this on every curb in the country? And it's
Mhm.
this huge thing. And if you're in a wheelchair or if you're on crutches or if you are in some way, shape, or form getting to the end of the street and cannot cross because there's not a curb dip in the sidewalk, it can impact your life in a big way, right?
Mhm.
Imagine what that
Right.
does. Like we who can walk comfortably and can
Right.
move and have mobility, it's really a privilege. And so being able to walk and not think about walking off the end of the curb
Right.
is also something we don't have to ever, think
Sure.
about for now, right? Because we might
Mhm.
not be part of that community. But if you are if you are um you know in that community, that's a huge thing to have considered, right? That seems like not a
Mhm.
big deal, but what you realize is that when you do the curb cuts, do you know who else benefits? The child that's on a tricycle, the older woman
Mhm.
who's pushing her grocery cart across the
Right.
street, a woman who's pushing a stroller, right?
Mhm.
you know
Mhm.
a a little kid, trying to, or people who are taking the little kids like out to,
Right. To
walk
walk.
and they, come off the curb, right? Someone with a puppy trying to cross the street. Everybody benefits, right? So
Right.
people who it makes all of our lives easier,
Mhm.
right? but it's designed for the people that it would be impossible. It'd be
Right.
impossible for them to have ease in their lives. And so
Right.
we have to think about it from this perspective of designing for the most marginalized. And
Hmm.
so that's how we think about design. That's how we think about solution is what's actually going to make things better for Black women. Because when we do see the disparities for our community, we see the disparities there. So that's where we need to design. That's where we need to put our resources is making it better. It doesn't mean that we're only making it better for Black women. What it means
No,
is
of
that when
course.
we get it right for Black women, it's better for everybody,
Right.
right?
Right.
So this is what's important.
Yeah. And what's that springing up for me also is that it's sort of this idea of the root cause, which is what we do in integrative medicine, what we do in Ayurveda, right? We look for the root cause. It's not about just dealing with the symptom that shows up. So, like you said, the event, right? Oh, something bad happened during a birthing event at the hospital. Let's see what happened there. It's uncovering like what is the whole system? What is the root cause of what led up to that event happening? Right? There's so many other pieces that are involved, is what you're talking about. And then it also, and I think your point is a really, really important one, is that when you solve in that way, when you start to look for the root cause, the systems that are in place, you do make it better for everyone by focusing in on the people who are most marginalized. That is a
Yeah.
benefit that ends up, spreading to everybody, but you're also doing the most important thing, which is helping the people who are at most risk, right? Which is,
Hmm.
I think, what you were saying. So I think that that's really important.